Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place where we share creative and inspiring learning in our schools. Season 2, Episode 21. Hello and thanks for listening to Education on Fire. I'd like to welcome back Stella James, who you will have heard on episode 1 of season 2, which was our recording from the NAPE conference. Stella is the founder of Gooseberry Planet, which uses gaming technology to help children learn about internet safety. And essentially it's a complete toolkit to teach e-safety and includes apps and resources for students, schools, teachers and parents. So it's kind of an all-inclusive package. Welcome, Stella, and thanks for joining us again.
Oh, hi, Mark, and you're very welcome. Been looking forward to it.
Brilliant, thank you. So can you give us a bit more of a background of how Gooseberry Planet came about, and I'm really interested also about the name as well and where that came from and sort of its original origins.
Well, the name, there is no scientific or, it's quite simple, really. I was walking the dog and I had a light bulb moment on a garden bench by a park while I was walking the dog. So nothing too, too exciting, I'm afraid. And the actual concept, that came out of my own challenges with my own children. So my son was going to secondary school for the first time and he wanted a smartphone. And I went online to try and find him to teach him about it. And he's a bit of a cool dude, 11-year-old, pretty savvy already. And, I looked and I thought he's not going to do any of what's out there. And it was all text-based, which I thought was a bit dull as well. And that's why I came up with the gaming side of things, and the gamification.
And e-safety and obviously computing in schools is a really big and important topic for everybody. And how have you found the way things have been taught? How have they changed, and how do you think sort of technology and specifically how Gooseberry Planet is working with schools and the sort of the collaboration between the two?
Well, I think it's a new area, so more than having to change, I think it has to change. A lot of schools do one day a year. Internet Safety Day is absolutely brilliant, but some schools think that tick box is there, and that's fine. But what I feel and what I'm very passionate about and what I'm trying to change is that we incorporate it more into the curriculum, so it's ongoing, and that's where the the change needs to be. Is that it can't be just once a year and here and there. It needs to be consistent. And teachers are unequipped as well, and it's not their fault. They haven't got the resource. So what we're trying to achieve is that we give the teachers the resource and we give them the process and a program to follow in order to tick that one box and actually make a difference and actually do teach children about what they should and how they should be doing it online.
So how exactly, for people that haven't come across Gooseberry Planet or actually haven't used the apps or the games before, how does it work? How do you sort of first approach it? Let's say, first of all, if you're a teacher listening and it's the sort of thing you might want to incorporate in your classroom or within your school.
Okay, well, the game itself is a tool. It's a classroom tool, so there is an emphasis on it, but everything we've created is very, very flexible. So first of all, the child plays the game. And there's different levels for different year groups, so different languages, different scenarios, going down to playground, which is for year 1. It's very basic. It's just touching on selfies and webcams and all those type of things. So while the child is playing, the teacher then has an app, or they can log into our platform, and that views and shows exactly how the child is performing in the game and highlights vulnerabilities, but it also is supported by a workbook, which is inside the teacher app, and a lesson plan, which is supported inside the lesson plan, and resource. So we feed resource. And one of the teachers' biggest challenges is keeping it up to date. So we keep ours up to date with all the latest apps that children will be using. And then the nice little connection is it's got the parent as well. So the parent can log in and view and see how their child is performing at school. We've got an update happening later in the year where the parent will be emailed with how their child responded to a scenario and what they need to be talking to their child about. So it really gives hands-on advice.
And what I really love about that is the fact that it's all connected. It's not individual sections of the school does it on their own and the child does it on their own and the parent doesn't quite know what's going on. The whole thing is inclusive, which seems like a really, really, really key factor, which I've not really heard about before. And when the children are doing it, are they using it on an app on an iPad, or are they doing it on an online platform on the computer? How does that part work?
All the above. So they go via our website, so that's our online platform. We've also got it on on iTunes, so iPads and iTouches, and also tablets as well.
Great. And so, do you think it's the regular use of it which is going to be the most important thing for the children in terms of their progression? So they get used to the scenarios and they think, oh, I know it all now, I don't need to learn anymore. So how does the progression work as they get older? Is it just the scenarios change and fit a little bit more around what it is that they're likely to become exposed to?
It's more than that. So, in the same way that teachers teach children about their times table, it's about repetition. And you can't change your mindset unless you do it again and again and again and again and again. So they don't play the same game again and again, but there's a repetition in there so that they can learn. And within one level, there's 10 games. So once they finish the 10 games, it becomes a game. So again, after 12 weeks, which is, the program, they can play it again and compete against with their schoolmates. And that's the key thing. It's about repetition. And that's the only way that we're going to change and make children aware of the real dangers that are out there.
And in your experience of all of this, what do you think the dangers are, and how do you sort of bridge the barrier between kind of just feeling safe online because you're aware of the dangers and you know how to deal with them, and as opposed to just everything being set up as a fearful scenario, which then has a sort of a more negative impact on the child and maybe what they think they may happen on the internet?
You've got to be positive. The internet is an amazing tool, and it is an amazing tool for all of us. And no matter how much, we can all put the fear of God in our children, but then actually they still want to explore. And you can block, which is fine, but then it goes underground. We have to embrace. Children don't see an online and offline scenarios now. They see everything as online, and so what we need to do in exactly the same way as crossing the road, like we used to all be taught with that little hedgehog, I can't remember what it's called, I'm showing my age now. But we have to educate. No matter what we do, it's all about educating and showing children and highlight what potentially could happen. Look at Kaylee's love story, just been released. It's on our Facebook page if anybody wants to go and have a look at it. But it's heart-rending that in the space of 2 weeks, a girl befriends a guy on Facebook. He's not who he says he is. She meets him, and then, 15 days later, she's dead. I met with the Breck Foundation. Her son, Breck, was murdered by an online gamer. He was 18, I think Breck was 13 or 14 years old. Yeah, there are huge dangers there. So what we need to do is teach children to be aware of, what potentially could happen. And, we're so old-fashioned in the way that we speak. We say stranger danger. Children don't use stranger danger. We say online people, because it's people online that, they relate to. It's like cyber bullying and things like that. Children don't use cyber bullying. It's online bullying. It's those type of things. It's also about our terminology, and it's about education.
And I guess that's a two-way street, isn't it? Because we were discussing just before we started recording, and there are things that I learn about from our children because the school may well mention that something's happened or someone's made the school aware of a particular incident, and so we get an email to be informed that this has happened. And as you start to open that conversation again, which is always a really positive thing, it often we hear things and new things which have been developed which we haven't heard of, but the children have because they've sort of been exposed to this sort of thing. And I think that's quite a positive thing. It's the two-way communication and just an open dialogue about how all these things work that I think is probably key, rather than assuming that as the adults or even as the teachers teacher that we know everything. We might have a curriculum to follow or something that we know we have to get across, but actually listening and being involved the other way round is probably a really important factor.
Yeah, the open dialogue is one of the most important factors, and evidence is proving that if something sinister happens and you've got an open dialogue with a child, they're more likely to come to you. And I think parents especially tend to sort of put their head in the sand a little bit and go, oh, I don't know about that. But actually, if you sit down with children and say, and I do it with my 10-year-old, my constant research is with my own children, what they're doing, how they're doing it. So, my 10-year-old, I found from him being online, the game center, the dangers of the game center and how to make them safe. And I sit down with him on a regular basis and just watch what he's doing and teach myself and find out, well, how does that work, Luke? What do you do here? How do you do this? Not so much my 15-year-old because he thinks I'm an alien and doesn't communicate anymore, but very much, it's about, and it is about a two-way dialogue all the time. Use them to learn, and that's absolutely spot on.
I mean, personally, we had a situation recently where there was a scam on related to a mobile phone, and it was just one of those things. I think you'd be on YouTube or watching something like that, and there's a company out there that puts almost like an invisible film over a particular page, and you click it just literally to close the window or just to get off of what it is, but they use that as a way of directly saying your agreement to actually paying or signing up to their services, and that's really hard to combat, isn't it? I would imagine, because the people involved aren't even aware that that's the case, and I don't quite know when you sort of get to a level of people trying to do that sort of thing, and essentially what happens in that scenario is you're agreeing that your mobile phone provider actually can then charge you more money, because we even had a cap on this particular contract, but because it was a third party, they said, oh no, that doesn't cover that. And I had conversations with the mobile company, and also eventually got through to the company that was actually doing this scam, which they don't actually say is a scam, it's a legitimate thing, and they say we'll get your money back, which of course it didn't. And in the end, we just decided to change our mobile provider, because we said if we can't have the support and understanding of that, then we don't feel safe using the company that we've got. But these sorts of things, that's not something I'd ever heard of before. And it was only once we'd actually been caught up in this thing that you then suddenly find online there's all sorts of things like that happening. Yeah,
there's so much fake stuff that is going on, and I think that's one of the challenges, and I think we all just need to be vigilant. And in exactly the same way as walking around the streets and locking our windows. I use that analogy a lot when I'm talking at parent workshops. And, you wouldn't walk out the house without checking your windows, and it's just check your URL, see where it's going. Even on eBay now, you can click a link and it takes you outside of eBay and you think you've bought something, and, it's all exactly as you said. It's completely legitimate, but it looks on the face of it totally legitimate when you're actually inside eBay, but then what actually comes out the other end is totally different, and you're 50 quid less lighter. And I think I think the ISPs have a lot to do, and I think Google especially needs to tighten up on what goes on there to prevent this from happening, because not everybody's savvy, everybody's very trustworthy, and everybody believes a lot, especially on Facebook, what's there. They think, oh, it's on Facebook, so therefore it means it's true. And it's like, well, actually, no, you still got to be ultra vigilant, and you still got to check where you're going and look at your URL and check them out a little bit. It's the same as you would buy something in a shop. You wouldn't, maybe some people would, but you'd check before walking in a shop whether it's legitimate. You'd be much happier buying something that's in a high street rather than on a market or just the side of the road, because potentially there could be problems with it at a later date.
Yeah, and I guess that's the real key, isn't it, for these large companies, is the fact that people do have a sense that there's some safety involved in there, and it just needs to be that hopefully they're working as hard as they possibly can to put everything in place for that to be the case, so that the people that are using these websites and using the service providers and the social media, that they can be as safe as they can, and you feel like they're working on your side. I think that's part of the problem when you hear stories about privacy and trying to get your information and how all the algorithms work, in that is you start to get a little bit of distrust, I think, and so like you said, the whole feeling of it changes. It feels less positive. You feel like you really are on your own, and I think that's sort of a dangerous cycle to get in, because, like you said, the internet's a really important resource now, not just for information, but for communication and just general sharing of our lives. I mean, there are people that I'm in communication with now, which is purely because things like Facebook and Twitter and all those things are online, and you get a chance to connect in a different way and a more free way, whereas you might not be able to travel to the other side of the country or a different part of the world, or you might not have made that telephone call, but the odd message actually is a nicer way of staying in touch.
Yeah, no, totally, and you're absolutely right, and we just need to change the way that we think about things, and it is an adjustment, and I think our generation has to think about that. My children's generation, it will become natural. My 15-year-old, I was listening to him having a chat with my 10-year-old, and he was like, Luke, just because it's on the internet doesn't always mean that it's true, and they're already a lot more savvier and they'll be okay, and they will be okay, but it's just there's some really sly people out there, and that's what we need to do is just protect them from that side of things.
Yeah, and I really liked your analogy about the when you leave the house, you lock the door and you check the window, because it really is just that, isn't it? You're not afraid to walk outside of your house, but you know that if you're going away, you just need to make sure that you're secure. And I guess that's exactly the same principle, which is what you were saying about your safety on the internet. It's the fact that you're going online all the time, you're really enjoying it, you're enjoying the content, you're enjoying the social aspect, but you just need to know that in certain circumstances, you need to check where you're going. You're checking that you're safe. You're not going somewhere that you don't know where you're going, or certainly that you're not using something that you haven't heard anyone else use, or you don't. That maybe you've said, "Oh, I've come across this. So and so's mentioned this particular thing. Is it okay for me to go on there and use it and that sort of thing?" And I guess, like you say, it's just a question of checking in occasionally on those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, totally, and the more we live like that, it's like sharing on Facebook. I always use the analogy, well, I tell you what, just go and put it on Piccadilly Circus and write it up there, and off you go. You just as well leave your front door open if you don't lock yourself down on your social media. It's exactly that. You're telling everybody about you and your children. The scary stats are that by the age of 5 years old, there will be 1,500 images of a child online. Your daughter or your son, because it's the parents that are posting all the time, and they don't think about it, and they're not thinking about their digital footprint, or how that can impact them later in life. And I think we just all need to be aware that now we're doing it online. It's not so much a physical sense, but we've got to do that as well. So, and we can't keep going offline and online, because actually it's all connected. Some people have got iPhones that now open their front doors because it's all internet or Wi-Fi connected. So we do really need to sort of think about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
And also, of course, the other thing is the fact that you don't have always complete control of these things, because especially with things like Facebook, when you get tagged in something, I personally don't usually put pictures of our kids online. But there have been situations where other family members or friends have tagged me in something, but they've taken a picture of a party or something like that, and then all of a sudden, all sorts of images and all sorts of comments of things that you've been not posted by me or our immediate family specifically suddenly are online, and once they're online, they're very hard to get down, aren't they? That's like you were saying about the footprint, is the fact that if you put a poster up in your street, you can take it down, and only the people that have seen it. But with your footprint these days, it's there for a long time, if not permanently, and that has a big impact. And I think that's hard for children to understand, is the fact that you might have posted something now which was really funny, but then when you're going for your first maybe part-time job or even full-time job in a few short years' time, the first thing that some employers do is go onto Facebook or a social media site and search you and see what you're up to and what your life entails, and all of those things then come back and are part of your record.
Yeah, and that's huge. More and more employers are doing that, and we've really got to think about, the classic example is about you tagging. People are just too open, I think. And, don't get me wrong, I do share on Facebook. So I had a scenario a couple of months ago. One son had broken his hand and the other son had broken his foot, and it was quite comical in the space of 4 days of one another. And I posted a photo of both of them. But I'm very, I'm very conscious, and I don't allow people to share my pictures or share my pictures of my children either, because once it's out there, it is gone. You can never, ever, ever get it back. And I just think we need to be a little bit more protective. You wouldn't do it to your child on a street. You wouldn't walk around and introduce everybody to your child and go, hey, hi, this is so-and-so. You're a lot more protective, because you're like, I don't want, I don't know who he is. I don't want to talk to him. And we have this whole different mentality because it's physical. And, the one thing that people have got to realize is what you cannot see is the danger, not what you can see. And, and we've just, almost got to get a grip a little bit with reality and say, okay, I can put pictures, but to tag or take pictures of other people's children, you just can't do. It's a categoric no. You do not have that permission. And also another thing that I'm coming across a lot, and as a parent, children, they have sleepovers, and parents will go, well, what do you do when, they go over to somebody's house and, they're watching whatever they want? And I went, okay, let me ask you this question. If your son went to somebody's house and they drank alcohol, how would you feel? And they go, I would go absolutely nuts. And I go, so what's the difference to them watching YouTube when it's an 18? Or playing a game when it's an 18? I said, you have your rights as a parent to stop this and say, okay, these are the rules that we have in our house. And once we all start having that sort of mentality, we'll be able to protect our children a lot more.
I think that's right. And I think also you mentioned the YouTube factor there. And it's amazing the perception I think that children have about, if it's on YouTube, it's okay, no matter what the certificate may or may not be.
Yeah.
Whereas they wouldn't put on a DVD that was a 12, 15 or 18 or whatever it would be. But it's on YouTube and it's just a clip and it's not the whole thing. So therefore it's okay. It's okay. And I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but I think whether it's just a generational thing, it's kind of YouTube is my thing and this is part of my life and that's okay. And actually, whereas the DVD cupboard may just be part of the house and therefore I wouldn't go and do that there. I'm not quite sure, but there's definitely a perception that it's a different type of world, even if the content's the same.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's a really big thing. Everybody's like, yeah, but my son plays YouTube, and how do we stop it? And it is down to that. Well, would you let your child? YouTube is fantastic. My son learnt to fish off YouTube. Totally learnt to fish and makes floats, and they called all sorts of things to the point where he nicks my sparkly nail varnish. But but we have to just change that. It's all so online, and people just think, yeah, just let their child go and have the internet free and do what they want. You wouldn't let your child walk around the street on their own. So why on earth are you letting them go on the internet on their own without any sort of monitoring? And I'm not one for a helicopter parent. I am a very liberal parent, and both my children, are very independent. And but I have boundaries, and I use something at home, and it is an amazing tool called Home Halo, and I have tested all of them, and it's by far the best device, and it allows me to give content for the 10-year-old and different content for the 15-year-old. But also what it does is it empowers me to switch off the internet on individual devices, because another thing is we all, as parents, sometimes, and I hold my hands up to this as well, use iPads and iPhones as babysitters. How many of us have been in the doctors or, and you go, and they're driving you crazy and you just have that, long journeys, have that, it's easy to do. But we have to create boundaries in exactly the same way as we would walking around or letting our children go out in the evening. My 12, well, he's 15. He has to be in. He has a party. He's got to be in by 11:30. He's nearly 16. But it's the same with the internet. The internet in our house goes off at 9 o'clock on a school night. There is no negotiation whatsoever. Those are the rules. Not because, I'm a control freak, but actually he needs to go to sleep.
And that's I'm sorry to get in there. I mean, that's a massive thing as well, isn't it? It's, the whole, whatever the content happens to be at that time of night, there's just the general well-being of kind of, if they've got an iPad in their room or if they've got internet in their room, the chances are they'll want to do it, and they'll push and they'll do it late, and they've gone to bed and it's all fine and the door's shut and all that sort of thing. And
that's when it starts, and that's when the grooming starts, and you don't even know it's going on. That's when it starts, and it amazes me how sometimes. But how do you stop them? And I go, well, you take it away. It is literal. Be a parent. Be a parent. And stop. You do literally have to take control again. You do have to take control, and I get, as you can most probably sense in my voice, I get really passionate about it. Really, really, very passionate that, we tend to let our children do what they want to do rather than going, actually, yeah, it's a bit difficult at the beginning, but, in the long term, it works. You do have to just restrict them.
Absolutely. And, was it Halo, you said, was one of the tools
Home Halo.
used?
Yeah, we give them. Anybody wants one, just email me. I have a stash in my office because I think it is so amazing and so brilliant because of what I've tested. The girls are laughing because we've just got 20 boxes that have just arrived at the office as we speak. But I think it's so amazing that we're giving every school that has Gooseberry Planet, a parent gets one of these free of charge.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And gets a free subscription for 30 days because it is just brilliant, because it just brings the control back into the house. And like you said, it's actually about welfare. I can confidently go, my son takes his phone up to his bedroom, and the internet turns off. We're lucky we're in a bad area, so we don't have 4 or 3G. But if we did, I would literally take the phone off him. No devices. And the statistics are 71% of 5 to 6 year olds have now a device in their bedroom, which I think is scandalous. I just can't even believe parents allow that.
Yeah. So you said about contacting you. So just tell us about your website and the best way for people to kind of sort of have a look at Gooseberry Planet and the things that are on offered. I mean, I've got a really good idea now of how it all works from chatting, which has been fantastic. But if people want to go and actually visually look at what's going on, where do they need to go, and what have you got on offer on the website?
Right, our website is gooseberryplanet.com, but we are very much targeted to schools. So what we're asking parents to do is go into the schools and say, why are we not doing Gooseberry Planet? Because we are the only platform in the UK, potentially globally, that is offering what we're offering. We also have a lot of free resource on our website for parents. If you go into the news area, there's one on Musical.ly, which is the most downloaded app at the moment, but the biggest concern from CEOP. There's Pokemon, there's sexting, flirty sex. There's lots of different things there for parents. Unfortunately, the system doesn't work unless the school buys it, so you do have to push back and go to the school going, right, what are we doing? How are we teaching this? And and push the school to do it.
Great. And what is the cost of the school?
The school it's £3.50 a year per student. So the parents could even say, do you know what, I'll pay it.
Yeah.
So it's £3.50 per student per year. And that means the teacher gets an app for them, the child and the parent, and all the resources are free of charge.
Oh, I mean, it's fantastic value, and then you're completely set up, as we said right at the beginning of chatting. Everybody's connected and everyone knows what's going on. You feel like collectively we're looking after our children online, and I think that just feels like a great place to be, rather than, like we said, about just having it as a separate thing. Oh, it's fine. There'll be someone stood by a whiteboard at some stage talking again about e-safety and making sure that you don't chat online to anyone that you don't know. and the things have moved on so much further now, and it sounds like a fantastic thing to get involved. And I know our school's not done it, and that's first thing I'm gonna do is have that conversation too.
Yeah, no, and I think as well, if we join forces and if everybody starts taking responsibility, something always has to start somewhere, and that's one of my missions, is let's make a change. Let's make schools teach this on a regular basis. Yes, the maths is important. Yes, English is important, but life skills are just as important, and I think it would be every parent's worst nightmare to have to go through what Lauren went through with Breck when he got murdered by somebody online. I don't think any one of us can really comprehend what, she's an amazing human being that could go through. And I think if we all stand up for it, it's our way to stand up for it and say, right, let's make a difference. Let's make this happen.
Absolutely. And on the website, you've got some testimonials of other students in schools doing it now, which looks really, really good. I mean, how many schools have you been involved in?
Right, so we only launched on October the 7th, 2015, and we've got 112 schools and 22,000 students and growing. So we've got some really exciting stuff happening this year. So we hope to double that by the end of the year easily.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you've also got a CPD section. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, it's a statutory guidelines, and this is one of my biggest bugbears, but it is a statutory requirement that every member of staff in a school has to be trained on safeguarding. Now, some schools feel it's okay just to have a piece of paper, the teacher signs it, and then that's their training done. So what we've done is created online training for teachers. They can go on in their own time. There's little modules broken down and get their safeguarding training. So it really fits with what the school has to do, and it also gives the head teacher the visualization of who's done it and who hasn't. So, from a statutory requirement, they have to, for Ofsted, all be taught about safeguarding. So our CPD has been launched in about 5 days, and it looks like the game. There's a bit of a game in there. It's fun. It's interactive. So we're just trying to bring to life something that, is a bit of a heavy topic, really.
And I think that's really key. I've just had to do the same sort of thing as a musician and educator. I go into schools and teach, and one of the organisations that I work for has done exactly the same sort of thing, rather than just literally hundreds of people being in a room being talked at by somebody who has to tell you what it is that you need to say or not say, or what the protocol is for anything.
Death by PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly, which isn't very powerful. It's then it was done online, it was done in modules, it was done with scenarios, and you've got the time to do it in your own space, and you really have to do it on your own, and you really have to know what you're talking about, having been through all the information, and you really do feel like you're in a better position then to just be completely aware of what it is. You're supporting your school and then everything they've got to do, like I said, from Ofsted and all that kind of thing. But also at the same time, you've got all the skills that you need, and you've actually been totally immersed. And also you're doing it in the same type of way as you can be doing the training for the children as well, which I think then, as we said before, it's all about linking it up and actually feeling like you're part of the same community. And we're all learning, whether we're the adults or the children, because you say these things are moving so fast, and new technology brings up new challenges.
Yeah, and I think technology, look, we've got education is still the same as it was in the Victorian times. Yes, we have touch boards, yes, touch screens and technology to do it, but actually, how has that changed as in teaching? And teachers, I feel for them, because they are put under so much pressure. And we need to give them more resource rather than moaning at them all the time. Let's help them achieve what they need. And technology is such a good way, because you can track learning outcomes, how people are performing, because it's real evidence rather than, going on a gut instinct whether somebody's learned it or not.
And that's key. And like I say, evidence is key at the minute in education. And so to be able to do that in a more modern way is a really positive thing, I think. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a really interesting and thought-provoking conversation, and as Stella said, if you go to gooseberryplanet.com, there's some great resources there. You can get in contact there, and also just with that knowledge, you can go to your school and say that you've heard about this, or it's something you'd like to implement as a teacher, and just send them straight to the website. It's really clear. It's really it's got so many great resources on there, and so many free extras. And I really recommend you just do it as a starting point, and just see if we can sort of connect all these things together and work together for the safeguarding of our children, and also for ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's something that each generation has to do. We can't hide from that anymore.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Oh, pleasure. I'm so glad you could join us, and especially having met you at the NAPE conference. It was really nice to be able to sort of have a proper full conversation about it, and really sort of inform our listeners of exactly what was involved and how they can use Gooseberry Planet.
All right, brilliant. No problem at all.
Lovely.
And anytime.
Great. Thanks very much, Stella.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information, please go to educationonfire.com.